Hi everyone, David here. In our last session, we covered the fundamentals of trend lines. Today, I want to highlight common errors in drawing them and provide various examples to improve your accuracy. Let's go! Don't forget to check the description to join our community and stay updated. So now let's start simple with what ideal, best case scenario trend lines will look like. Now here is your current moving downtrend. You click on your line drawing tool. Start from past the first swing high and drag the line down, connecting the 2 points. Also, make sure when you draw your trend line to have it extended further down, because if price makes it back up to this trend line in the future, you want to have it ready there as a reminder to look. So here was your last trend line that would have been drawn before price broke the trend line. Now if you want, you can also draw this longer term trend line along these higher points like this. So next, here's your moving downtrend. And again, we connect the swing highs along the top. And the swing lows along the bottom. So next, now this is an important point we want to discuss. There isn't always a trend line you can draw, as there isn't always going to be suitable price movement for a trend line to be applied to it. So to the left here, we had good price movement where you would have had 2 trend lines applied before price broke the bottom trend line and started a downtrend. But now looking at the current trend, there isn't suitable price movement to apply a trend line. You could apply a super tight trend line like this, but that does not help your overall analysis. So in this case, we leave it out. So let's get into imperfect trend lines. So a type of imperfect trend line you will often see is when not all the points are touching. What this means is when you draw a trend line, you won't always be able to connect all the swing highs or swing lows. So in that case, just draw your trend line where it can touch the most amount of points and leave the other points out. So here is a clear moving downtrend. And let's go ahead and apply our trend lines where we can get as many touches as possible. Now notice how these points here all touch the trend line, but where these points here do not touch, and that is perfectly fine because again, we use trend lines as guidance. We don't use them on their own for trade entries. So let's go to another example. So here we have our clear moving downtrend. We place our trend line along the top, connecting the swing highs, and we place our trend line along the bottom, connecting the swing lows. Now again, notice the points that we were able to connect with the trend line and the points that didn't quite reach the trend line, which again is fine. Now this leads us to a question we often get asked, which is, do you draw your trend line through the candle closes, candle bodies, or wick ends? And at this point, you should already know the answer, which is to draw your line in an area where you can get the most amount of touches, meaning the line you draw will hit both wicks and candle bodies depending on the trend you are looking at. So here was your clear downtrend, and in order to hit all these points here, this is where you would have placed your trend line. Now notice how this point here, the trend line is at the wick end, and again at this point here, the trend line is at the wick end. Now at this third point, the trend line is piercing the wick and touching the candle body, which is necessary in order to be able to hit the following points. So again, the trend line hits the candle body, and here the trend line hits the wick end, and here the trend line hits the wick and body. Notice how the trend line hits candle closes and wicks, whichever allows for us to get the most amount of touches. Price then finally broke out and started a trend change. So same along the bottom, our trend line would be placed like this, because that way we can hit all 3 points. So let's do this one more time. Here's your clear moving downtrend, and along the top we would place our trend line like this. Again, wick ends, doesn't touch, candle close, wick end. And along the bottom we would place our trend line like this. Alright, if you found this video helpful, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. It really motivates me to keep creating more content for you. See you in the next one.